Okay, my name is Del Riley. I'm a former residential school survivor, and I guess one of the characters that was thrown in residential school with TB, so I could infect the other kids. But I survived, got out of there, and got myself educated, and I started working in land claims research, and ended up becoming a director of it and doing a lot of work in actually the early development of land claims processes, even they're currently using. But this also, I guess, provided me with the kind of basis I needed to really know where we had to go in terms of getting it in the Constitution of Canada, or getting it recognized so that any province that got the whim suppress the First Nations rights, they just did it. I first got involved in this actually in the early 70s, and I analyzed thoroughly the Indian Act, the racism of it, and the fact that there was very little we could do at that time, since all of the members of Parliament were in acceptance of this kind of application of racism. So you couldn't get anywhere at that time. I was so active in the land claims in getting results and doing proper kind of research that one day all the chiefs came to me and said, "Hey, we want you as a leader." And I ran an election and got elected. And so then that's where started my plan to get this put in the Constitution. The Declaration is a declaration that every First Nation in North America, and perhaps even South America, could agree on, because it involves our relationship with the Creator and the land, and that's why it's so important, and serves as the basis of our relationship. We've spoken, our elders have spoken, our wisest people put this together. It happened at exactly the same time. During that same time period, I'm not exactly sure if I remember exactly how time, but it was over several days or weeks that we sat down and put together the wording, and as well we called in all of the elders and everyone to put together the declaration that is so closely related to Section 35 and 25. When I got elected, I recognized one of the major faults right away, in that the National Indian Brotherhood was run by boards that were created by organizations, and it didn't necessarily involve chiefs. Sometimes they involved chiefs, but who was ever that organization chose to be on the board. So it didn't have what I thought was a good representation. So I recommended the changeover then to the Assembly of, eventually they called it the Assembly of First Nations. to include every First Nation in Canada through its chief, so that everyone would feel a part, and once a year, they could get together and discuss issues. And that's essentially how things went. But perhaps it should go even further than that, and that people should vote for your leader, maybe, not. But that was how it all came about. Well, I was a leader, and I was chair of or all the organizations across Canada, and I was always an aggressive individual. So and I pushed this agenda because we had a deadline. The government of Canada was patriating the Constitution, and I wanted to ensure that our rights were entrenched, and that was always something that I felt I had to do. Well, I pushed and did everything in my power to involve everyone I possibly could across Canada, and we did all the important things. We lobbied with every member of parliament there was. We lobbied with premiers. We even I even opened up an office in England, and I started lobbying around the world. And finally, Gretchen came to me in a committee meeting in Parliament, which I was attending that evening, and said, "Mr. Riley, if you will close your office in England, we will give you your protection for Aboriginal treaty rights." And I shook his hand, and that's how it got in here. That was the moment of our agreement. And in my mind, that finalized it. Yeah, what we were concerned about at the time, which actually it was happening so often that everybody was interpreting, denigrating Aboriginal treaty rights as being either non-existent or subject to both federal and provincial laws, so that essentially making them unable to practice at all. So we wanted to get away from all of this interpretations by being the only ones that could really interpret Aboriginal treaty rights, and that would be us. Any more than me interpreting what the rights of the colonists who came here were as serfs or indentured people. The importance of the Royal Proclamation, in my mind, the most important thing is that it didn't create any rights. It recognized your rights. That's the most important thing of it. Then the next important thing, because of the war that was fought with the British at the time, and they received a severe defeat at the hands of the First Nations at that time, who captured 9 of 11 forts. And as a result of that, the British issued the Royal Proclamation, which essentially set out a treaty-making process between the nations, and also a process that had to be approved by all the majority members of that First Nation on any land transaction. And this would, well, this supersedes, of course, whatever they've got in the Indian Act. So, but people haven't been using it yet. But that's, and the important thing from that was that Indians didn't want to be taxed. And eventually, after the War of 1812, 1814, in Canada here, a law was passed which was a sort of a more definitive description of the law pertaining to Indians, and included in that was the taxation freedom for all Indians within Upper Canada. And the important thing about that one was that this was memorialized. This was included in another proclamation, which was issued as part of the process that the Royal Proclamation started on making treaties. And the proclamation included the several sections of the Indian Protection Act of 1850, and the thing about the proclamation is you can't take away those rights that were now part of that proclamation without discussing that with the First Nations. But to them, ensuring that they were not part of the colonist taxation schemes, they had that, it was now part of not only the law then, but their rights as well today. I thought what should have happened is they should have sat down and worked out what the biggest problem in the way of progress is, and that's Canada has maintained its Apartheid Act, the Indian Act, whereas in South Africa, when they brought in the Truth and Reconciliation, they got rid of their Apartheid Act. Canada has a way to go yet. They've got to get rid of that Apartheid Act and all the racism associated in all other federal acts and policies. Then we can move ahead. But Section 35, that's our job, not the courts by some judge or previous lawyer to that who their whole life is just an opinion on this, that, or whatever. But rights are different. They're not subject to colonists' opinions, because they tend to be too self-serving. And if we were to get opinions of all the brown-skinned people around the world, they would all be in favor of our position. So, get rid of these, that empty box opinions of people about our rights. We'll tell you what our rights are. The main thing, it's been used by our people for a long time. You can trace it back in history, but really, whatever was used, there are different things that were used across the country, and the right to do whatever you did with these medicines was really the right of that nation anyway. So sure, having it around way back in history is merely just supportive to what their right was anyways. We don't have to prove anything to anyone. On the other hand, they have to prove to us how they've acquired any sort of rights over it without any ever discussing it. That is the first hurdle that has to be overcome. In my mind, and based on my experience over the years, which is years and years working on land claims and knowing Aboriginal treaty rights, treaties to me are merely introductions to nation, and your rights are never really explained there, and for good reason. It was done back in a time when there was very little resource development other than timber and furs. But the rights can't be explained by the treaties. As I said, they're merely introductions. The nation itself will determine exactly what's involved in their own particular rights. But it probably includes all the resources within land that they own in their treaty area, not just reserves. They still own the treaty area.